Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the DNA Sports Talk Show here on Warrior Network. I'm Davis Gregory here with Andrew Cross, and today we've got our first episode of college football. We're going to be taking a look at the top 4 rankings and also a little bit of a look at the rest of the playoff outlook, as we've got some teams that are outside that look to get in after conference championship weekend. So, Andrew, take it away. The number 1 team in the nation, the Alabama Crimson Tide. What you think about them?
I really think, though, number 1 and number 2 spots are locked down for Bama and Clemson. Even if, for some reason Alabama loses their conference championship game, they're still in. I mean, they're the best team in football. I mean, look what Nick Saban has done without a quarterback over the years. He's had a lot of not very good passing quarterbacks, and now he has the best one in the nation. And they are undefeated so far, and they've beat a bunch of teams that have been ranked over the past couple of weeks. Bama and Auburn will play in the Iron Bowl at the end of the year, and then they will play Georgia in the SEC Championship game. And I would love to see how that SEC Championship game will play out between Bama and Georgia. That's a rematch of the finals last year.
Right. I think that for Alabama, really, it's just if Tua's going to be 100%, I'm going to really enjoy watching that Georgia game. If not, I don't think anybody's really going to be enjoying that game, because if Tua's out, then if Jalen's still hurt, then they've got to go with their third stringer, which doesn't look pretty. But I think they'll handle Auburn, but I do think that they will lose to Georgia in the SEC Championship game. So that's my take on Alabama. Now, number 2, the Clemson Tigers in the ACC Conference. They've already secured a spot in the ACC Championship game and will play Pitt, most likely, who is first in the opposite division of Clemson. And Clemson really has just been how they've supposed to be over the past couple of years, where they've just stayed a very, very, very good, consistent football team over the years. And being able to make the playoffs again this year is huge for Clemson. And I don't think that they'll win the playoffs, but I do think that Clemson will go undefeated throughout the rest of the season, playing up against their last 2 games, which they've got Duke and South Carolina, both unranked opponents. South Carolina was a high-ranked team, somewhat high-ranked at the beginning of the season, but then just dropped, and Duke, just known for basketball, really. But ACC Championship will be on December 1st, and Pitt is 5-1 as of now. So number 3, who you got?
So we have Notre Dame, and Notre Dame, first of all, not in a conference, so no conference championship game, and all they do is play ACC teams. And they don't necessarily play the top dogs of the ACC. They'll play, like a Syracuse or a Pitt or some smaller team like that. Speaking of Syracuse, they have number 13 Syracuse this week, and then they have unranked USC. And their strength of schedule is at the very bottom of all these teams we're talking about. I mean, Notre Dame is that they haven't played anyone, so where do you put them in terms of, are they ahead of Michigan, who's played a lot of good teams?
Well, they did play Michigan at the beginning of the season and beat them.
That's true, but that was beginning of the season. Right, they were both ranked in the low teens. I think Michigan was ranked 19th, Notre Dame was 12th.
And Notre Dame had a quarterback change as well.
Exactly. They've played well, and I think Michigan's the only ranked team they've beaten so far this season.
I think they are.
And they're the only team that they've played who is ranked. So, I mean, I can't see Notre Dame I can't see them getting into the playoff if they lose to Syracuse.
Right.
I mean,
I think it's just strength of schedule, and they're also not playing conference championship. If they lose to Syracuse, I think they're gone.
Yeah, so do I. So moving on to Michigan, what do you think about them?
So the Wolverines, of course, have their 2 games left, but only one really stands in their way, and that's the one with Urban Meyer and the Ohio State Buckeyes. My opinion, I think Michigan has potential to win that game against Ohio State, but it's not going to be easy. That game, the big one, as we all like to call it, one of the biggest college football rivalries ever, and will be very interesting to see how those teams go at it that Saturday morning. I do think, though, that Michigan can take this one over Ohio State. Ohio State has that one loss, of course, to Purdue. Big one, though. And some people have said maybe if Ohio State beats Michigan, that maybe they could get in. But I just really don't think that will happen. I think Michigan will move on and get to the playoff, as they will play Northwestern in the Big Ten Championship game, I do believe, as Northwestern is, I think, 6-4, something like that. But they are going to be in the conference championship game against Michigan.
Well, I have the exact opposite. I have Ohio State taking it to Michigan and beating them. Michigan, they don't really move the ball. This is a typical, John Harbaugh team, and they don't move the ball that well. They have very good defense. And I think Urban Meyer he's got two good running backs in Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins. And Dwayne Haskins has been playing lights out as a freshman. I think he's like 50 yards away from breaking Ohio State's all-time passing record. And I don't know where the game is located, whether it's at Ohio State or Michigan, but I think Ohio State's going to give Michigan a run for their money. It's going to come down to who can score the most points. And Ohio State's defense, I mean, it's not to be overlooked either. It's a very good defense, even though they lost a ton from last year. I have Ohio State winning. I don't have them getting into the playoffs. But Georgia is one of those teams.
Right.
Where do they fall if they lose the SEC championship game to number 1 Alabama?
Now, if they lose, you can just kiss them goodbye. They're not getting in the top 4. But if they win, and like you said, if Ohio State beats Michigan and Georgia beats Alabama in the SEC championship game, I think we get the same situation last year. Alabama will still stay in, but Georgia will be a higher seed than Alabama just because of the head-to-head matchup. But I think that 2 SEC teams will be in the be in the college football playoff again if Georgia manages to beat Alabama in the SEC championship game. And I'm actually taking the dogs in that one. I actually think that Georgia, again, will win the SEC championship. I don't know about the national championship. I still got Alabama winning it all as of now.
I don't think Georgia's going to pull this off. They have too many freshmen, too many young players, and they lost so much from last year's team. And this Alabama team, I mean, they can throw it, and this is the best offense Saban has ever had. His defense isn't as great as it was last year, but still, it's amazing by regular D1 standards. And then, what about the Big 12? You have 2 one-loss teams in the Big 12 in Oklahoma and West Virginia. They're both ranked in the top 10 and have very good wins. I mean, I think they've both beaten Texas, who's been ranked very high at the time. And also, I mean, what do you do if one of those will go probably one-loss team all the way and win the Big 12? Do you think they have any chance of getting in at all?
I just don't think so because of how far back they are. I mean, Oklahoma is at 6, but you also got to think if Georgia wins, then that's going to screw everything up. Georgia's going to be in, Alabama's in, 2 SEC teams, and then maybe Notre Dame and Michigan. But if Michigan loses, that kind of creates everything. And I think if Michigan loses, then Ohio State might get in, or it could go to Oklahoma because they are the higher rank of Ohio State as of now. But we're going to move on to our final topic of this college football episode, and that is the UCF Golden Knights. Now, UCF last year was in the New Year's Six Bowl against the Auburn Tigers and beat them in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl in Atlanta, Georgia. And a lot of UCF fans, and including their entire town, claim them as national champions for going 13-0. Didn't even play in the playoffs, but they went undefeated, won their conference, and beat Auburn, who that season beat Georgia and Alabama. And UCF went on to claim a national championship. But to me, UCF does not deserve to get in ever. With the schedule that they have, they don't deserve to ever be in the college football playoff. They play in the American Conference, the second best team in that conference, number 24 Cincinnati, and they play this weekend at UCF. I mean, UCF's obviously going to win that game, but Cincinnati's not that big of any competition whatsoever for UCF. They're going to go to their conference championship game, they're going to beat whoever's there, and they're going to whine and cry about not getting in the top 4 because they went 13-0 again and probably are going to win their bowl game. But I just don't understand how you can think that a team who has who their opponents have a combined record of 37-51 when number 4 Michigan, who is, of course, the last team to get in the playoffs as of now, their combined opponent's record is 55-46. I don't see how you can even begin to think that UCF deserves a spot to play for a national championship.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and this is why I think that the committee should open it up to either like a 12-team playoff, a 16-team playoff, or an 8-team playoff, so that these teams who think they can, compete with the big dogs, such as UCF, they get in the playoff, they play the number 1 seed in Alabama, and they get blown out. And they come back down to earth, realizing that no one can really, they say they want Bama, no one can deal with Bama unless you have a defense that can stop them. And UCF does not have a defense that can stop Bama. They get, I think they're averaging 20 points against them per game. I mean, they have beaten some, okay teams. Last year, I think they beat a couple ranked teams. They beat Auburn, who was pretty decent. And then, but other than that, Nick Saban would just run up the score.
Oh, it'd be a 100+ victory for Alabama. Oh my goodness, it wouldn't even be fair. it wouldn't even be a fair game. He would keep the starters in all 4 quarters and run up the score. And honestly, they deserve it at that point in time. You asked for it, and you're going to get it. You're going to get 100 points scored on you if they played. That's my opinion. I think they would get blown out. They wouldn't even score. It'd be 121 to nothing. That'd be the final score of that game. Yeah. That is just my opinion. UCF absolutely does not deserve to be in the college football playoff. And that will conclude our college football episode. First one of the season. We will come back with college football when the conference championships roll around and, of course, when the playoffs are about to start up. But we want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of DNA, and we will see you guys next time.